Coming up on MilCyberSync, should we be worried? What experts have to say about the yet-to-materialize attacks on the U.S. by Russia.
Also ahead, we learn more about a nation that is both Russia's ally and adversary.
And Google's pat on the back for thwarting potentially billions of attacks. So get ready to get in sync with MilCyberSync.
You're watching the MilCyberSync Weekly News with your host, Nick Thomas, and news anchor, Layla Gulen.
Hello and welcome to the MilCyberSync Podcast, reporting on the latest events happening in cyber news. I'm Layla Gulen with your host, Nick Thomas. Nick, great to see you.
Hey, great to see you, Layla. And hey, I'm getting excited because it's getting closer for HammerCon. And we'd like to remind everyone that the Military Cyber Professionals Association first HammerCon is coming up on May the 19th. The conference takes place on the campus of Capital Technology University, so be sure to get your tickets before they run out at hammercon.org. Also, given the concentration of MCPA members around Fort Gordon, Georgia, the MCPA will have a remote viewing gathering hosted by CACI. Space is very limited, so please sign up if you'd like to go. Also, in more MCPA news, the MCPA Colorado chapter recently conducted a cyber career session at the National Cybersecurity Center in Colorado Springs. Our own friend of the podcast, Brad Rhodes, has more.
I'm Brad Rhodes, and I am the co-chapter lead for the Colorado chapter of the Military Cyber Professionals Association. Today, we're just wrapping up one of our cyber career assistance sessions here at the National Cybersecurity Center in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And we had a great turnout today where we got to talk to people about cyber careers. We talked to veterans, we talked to college students, we talked to recruiters. A number of different organizations came out and presented today talking about their organization's job opportunities available and really doing some really solid one-on-one networking with these folks so that they know where to get started in cybersecurity.
Brad, thank you for that. Cyber officials say American networks have yet to experience significant cyber attacks by Russian operatives amid the ongoing war in Ukraine. Should the U.S. be targeted, the attack will likely come in three forms: international spillover, criminal ransomware attacks like those that paralyzed the Colonial Pipeline and JBS Foods, and deliberate action taken by Russian state-sponsored actors against critical infrastructure, including the communications, energy, and medical sectors. Russia has long used cyber attacks to protect its forces and influence events beyond its borders. Its push into Ukraine was preceded by a tide of malicious hacks that crippled government websites and scrambled communications. Nick?
A Russian state-sponsored threat actor has been observed targeting diplomatic and government entities as part of a series of phishing campaigns that started in January. Threat intelligence has attributed the attacks to a hacking group tracked as APT-29, and we all know that as Cozy Bear, with some set of the activities associated with the crew assigned the moniker Nobilium. The initial access is said to have been added through spear phishing emails masquerading as administrative notices, using legitimate but compromised email addresses from other diplomatic entities. These emails contain an HTML dropper attachment called rootsaw that, when opened, triggers an infection sequence that delivers and executes a downloader dubbed BeatDrop on a target system. The findings also coincide with a special report from Microsoft, which observed Nobilium attempting to breach its firms serving government customers in NATO member states, Layla.
Yeah, well, the Computer Emergency Response Team of Ukraine and the National Bank of Ukraine are warning of massive DDoS attacks against pro-Ukrainian targets. The intelligence service in Romania, SRI, also warns of a similar type of attack targeting sites belonging to its national authorities. According to the CERT UA, the unknown threat actors are targeting compromised WordPress sites and injecting malicious JavaScript code called Brown Flood to perform the attacks. To execute the attack, codes are placed under the HTML structure of the main files in the websites and are base 64 encoded in order to avoid detection. CISA says another group has claimed credit for carrying out a DDoS attack against a Connecticut airport in response to U.S. material support of Ukraine. The Ukrainian CERT recommends that website owners take steps to detect and remove malicious JavaScript code and provide up-to-date support for website content management systems. It also recommends restricting access to website management pages. Nick?
CISA, along with the FBI, have updated their original alert regarding the malware being deployed against Ukraine. New forms of destructive malware identified by law enforcement include Hermetic Wiper, Isaac Wiper, and Caddy Wiper. All of these have been deployed on Ukrainian networks beginning in January of 2022. In light of Russia's cyber threat, CISA has been pointing all digital organizations to have its Shields Up initiative, which offers resources and best practices to prevent and mitigate a potential cyber attack. Layla.
Well, a growing number of threat actors are using the ongoing Russo-Ukrainian war as a lure in various phishing and malware campaigns. Government-backed actors from China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia, as well as various unattributed groups, have used various Ukraine war-related themes in an effort to get targets to open malicious emails or click malicious links. Financially motivated and criminal actors are also using current events as a means for targeting users. Attacks aimed at Russia have singled out several government entities, such as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with additional compromises impacting Russian defense contractors and manufacturers, as well as unnamed logistics company. Nick.
In fact, China continues to emerge as one of the top nations to target Russia. Despite Beijing's approval of the invasion of Ukraine and an increasingly close geopolitical relationship between the two autocracies, state-sponsored actors continue to launch phishing campaigns. Meanwhile, researchers observed in the infamous Russian APT-28 Fancy Bear group targeting users in Ukraine with new password-stealing malware delivered via booby-trapped email attachments. Last week, Microsoft released new threat intelligence claiming that Russian state-aligned actors had launched 237 campaigns against Ukrainian targets since just before the invasion, and that more were likely on their way. Layla?
Yeah. Well, a Chinese state-sponsored espionage group known as Override PANDA has resurfaced in recent weeks with a new phishing attack with the goal of stealing sensitive information. A recent report shows the Chinese APT used a spear phishing email to deliver a beacon of red team framework known as Viper. Override PANDA, also called NACON, Helsing, and Bronze Geneva, is known to operate on behalf of Chinese interests since at least 2005 to conduct intelligence gathering operations targeting Southeast Asian countries. Attack chains unleashed by the threat actor have involved the use of decoy documents attached to spear phishing emails that are designed to entice the intended victims to open and compromise themselves with malware. The target of the attacks is currently unknown, but with high probability it might be a government institution from a South Asian country. Nick.
Meanwhile, Central Asia's telecom sector has been a target of a Chinese-aligned cyber espionage group. These attacks have been executed with versions of malware such as ShadowPad and PlugX. Cybersecurity firm SentinelOne tied the intrusions to an actor it tracks under the name Motion Dragon, with tactical overlaps between the collective and other threat groups referred to as Nomad Panda. Earlier this year, researchers attributed distinct ShadowPad activity clusters to Chinese nation-state groups that operate in alignment with the country's Ministry of State Security Civilian Intelligence Agency and the People's Liberation Army. The hijacking of security products notwithstanding, other tactics adopted by the group include the use of known hacking tools and red team scripts to facilitate credential theft, lateral movement, and data exfil. The initial access vector still remains unclear. Layla?
So how do they do it? Research shows cybersecurity products are being used by Chinese hackers to execute malware. Security firm SentinelOne has observed a Chinese hacking group taking a trial and error approach to abusing antivirus applications for the sideloading of malicious DLLs. The observed activity, which tracks Motion Dragon, partially overlaps with a threat actor known as Calypso, Red Foxtrot, and Nomad Panda, which has been actively targeting entities in South Asia with known malware families. Motion Dragon has repeatedly attempted to bypass detection, abusing security applications from Bitdefender, Kaspersky, McAfee, Symantec, and Trend Micro for the sideloading of ShadowPad and PlugX malware variants. Nick.
Hey, great job, Layla. A lot of tongue twisters there. An elusive and sophisticated cyber espionage campaign orchestrated by the China-backed Winty Group has managed to fly under the radar since at least 2019, and it's dubbed Operation Cuckoo Bees. The massive intellectual property theft operation enabled the threat actor to exfiltrate hundreds of gigs of information. Targets included technology and manufacturing companies primarily located in East Asia, Western Europe, and North America. Researchers say the group's intent is towards theft of intellectual property from organizations in developed economies, and with moderate confidence that this is on behalf of China to support decision-making in a range of Chinese economic sectors. The multi-phased infection chain involves the exploitation of internet-facing servers to deploy a web shell with the goal of conducting reconnaissance, lateral movement, and data exfil activities. A rarely seen technique includes the abuse of Windows' common log file system mechanism to stash the payloads, enabling the hacking group to conceal their payloads and evade detection by traditional security products. Layla.
Wow. Well, new rules have taken effect this month, forcing banks to notify regulators within the first 36 hours after an organization suffers a qualifying computer security incident. Well, most U.S. banks have already been conditioned to a 72-hour incident reporting window through the New York Department of Financial Services cybersecurity regulation. Researchers say cybercriminals often conduct attacks as part of a broader campaign, including executing supply chain attacks that affect dozens of victims. FDIC-supervised banks can comply with a rule by reporting an incident to their case manager, who serves as a primary FDIC contact for supervisory-related matters. Well, experts say the legislation has some flaws. Most organizations are still trying to determine the scale and impact of security incidents, even after 36 hours. So this is almost a notification without the root cause being determined. Financial services and institutions are one of the most targeted sectors by global cyber adversaries. Nick?
Well, we've got more to come. The nation's biggest telecom companies and what they think of this off-the-shelf 5G network. More on that after the break.
Today's network and security monitoring solutions are vulnerable to overload situations that lead to decreased visibility and undetected intrusions. Monitoring applications require hardware to keep up with real-time traffic analysis, making it complex and costly. Your security monitoring solutions may be unable to keep up during cyber attacks or traffic spikes, making intrusion more likely. A new approach is needed to increase network protection and visibility. Excelio simplifies and streamlines your network monitoring for critical security, network, and application analysis. Learn more at excelio.com.
Welcome back. You're only as strong as your weakest link, a pilot program designed to root out digital vulnerabilities among government contractors has identified hundreds of flaws in just 1 year. Cybersecurity researchers with bug bounty team HackerOne discovered some 400 issues across dozens of companies during the Defense Industrial Base Vulnerability Disclosure Program. The program uses ethical hackers to identify whether similar critical and high-severity vulnerabilities existed for small to medium cleared and non-cleared defense industrial base companies with potential risks for critical infrastructure and the U.S. supply chain. The total represents a fraction of the Defense Department's 200,000 company-strong contracting pool, raising concerns about vulnerabilities across far more networks. Nick?
Google claims that it prevented more than 1 million bad applications from reaching Google Play last year. Additionally, the internet giant blocked 190,000 accounts belonging to bad developers and closed 500,000 developer accounts that were abandoned or inactive. The company said it has also taken various other steps to improve Android security and privacy, including by providing new compliance tools for developers, improving the safety of SDKs, limiting access to sensitive APIs and data, and new malware detection capabilities for Pixel phones. The tech giant says there will be a new data safety section in Google Play where application developers are required to provide information on whether they are collecting data and sharing it with third parties and the security practices of their application. Google says its security measures prevented billions of harmful installations from getting to its customers. Layla?
Well, a new vulnerability researchers are calling Augury is affecting Apple's M1, M1 Max, and A14 processors. It might also reach older A-series chips and newer M1 relatives. The discovery matters because hardware-based security flaws like Spectre have been a serious issue for Intel and AMD since their discovery in 2018. Although Augury hasn't led to real exploits yet, it's unique because it can leak data that neither the core nor any instructions have read. Well, this nullifies many defenses against Spectre, which work by tracking what data the core and instructions access. Augury comes from Apple Silicon's use of a data memory dependent prefetcher, which is an optimization that accounts for the content of previous memory prefetches. That method provides a clue as to the memory's contents, making it possible to leak them. Nick.
Vulnerability researchers at Microsoft are documenting the discovery of a pair of Linux privilege escalation flaws that could be chained together to plant dangerous malware or backdoors. The vulnerabilities, collectively known as NMUPSWIN, provide a roadmap for attackers to elevate privileges to root on many Linux desktop endpoints. Microsoft said its researchers created an experimental exploit capable of delivering a root backdoor with permanent root access. The two vulnerabilities have been fixed by the maintainer of the open source project, and Microsoft is recommending that Linux admins opt for strong monitoring of the platform's operating system and its components. Layla?
Researchers have identified 2,000 internet-exposed Linux servers that appear to be impacted by a REDIS vulnerability that has been exploited in attacks. The security hole has a CVSS core of 10 and is described as an insufficient sanitization in Lua. While Redis statistically links the Lua library, some Debian Ubuntu packages dynamically link it, leading to a sandbox escape that can be exploited to achieve remote code execution. Researchers also note that there are roughly 33,000 Redis servers that allow unauthenticated access from the internet, along with others that are publicly accessible but require authentication. But researchers say that given an exploit that has been thrown around in the wild, organizations should bump the priority of fixing this vulnerability. Both Debian and Ubuntu announced patches for the bug in February. Nick.
All right. A cyber espionage threat actor known for targeting a variety of critical infrastructure sectors around the world has been observed using an upgraded version of a remote access Trojan with information stealing capabilities. Dubbed TA410, this umbrella group comprises 3 teams named Flowing Frog, Looking Frog, and Jolly Frog. A cybersecurity firm says the subgroups operate somewhat independently, but they may share intelligence and campaign execution. Victims of the hacker collective include a manufacturing company in Japan, a mining business in India, and a charity in Israel. TA410 is also known to take advantage of both spear phishing and vulnerable internet-facing applications such as Microsoft Exchange, SharePoint, and SQL servers to gain initial access. Layla?
A major car rental company that has more than 2,000 locations across more than 110 countries has been targeted in a cyber attack. 6T says it's detected suspicious activity on its systems on April 29th and soon confirmed that it had been hit by a cyber attack. The Germany-based company claimed the incident was contained in an early stage and that an investigation has been launched with assistance from external experts. The company has not shared any additional information, but it is possible that it was targeted in a ransomware attack. Nick.
A California resident has been found guilty of stealing more than $23 million from the U.S. Department of Defense. Serjan Oyunter was convicted on a total of 6 criminal counts, including conspiracy to commit wire, mail, and bank fraud, aggravated identity theft, and making false statements to federal law enforcement officers. The stolen payment was meant for DoD jet fuel suppliers. An unnamed corporation that had a contract with the DoD to supply jet fuel to troops operating in Southeast Asia had employed an individual in New Jersey who communicated with the federal government on behalf of the corporation through a government computer system. But the DOJ alleges that Oyunter and other criminal conspirators based in Germany, Turkey, and New Jersey use a complicated phishing scheme to target the corporation. The 40-year-old faces more than 30 years in prison. Layla?
Well, finally, the National Institute of Standards and Technology wants to know how it did building a standalone 5th-generation network using commercial off-the-shelf equipment to demonstrate security benefits and practices while using the cloud-based technology. NIST says the information will be useful because standards associations have focused more on security at the interface of 5G components rather than on the components themselves. NIST is also planning on publishing how-to guides for replicating its secure network, and future phases of the project will include an expanded focus on security for 5G-specific use cases. Companies involved in building the network responded with their capabilities to a notice in the Federal Register. They include AT&T, T-Mobile, Cisco, Nokia, Dell, Intel, and Palo Alto Networks. The agency is seeking comment through June 27th on the draft special publication 1833B, which describes how NIST addresses security in the emerging computer environments and is aimed at network operators. Very interesting.
Good stuff.
Well, that's going to do it for us. Yeah, right. Well, that's going to do it for us. On behalf of Nick and myself, thank you so much for watching. You are now in sync with MilCyberSync. We'll see you again next week.